This is Kim Meyer, host of Choose to Rise. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Food for Thought podcast. I am your host, Kylie Thompson, and thank you so much for joining me for another week. I told you guys you were going to hear me say what episode it is until episode 10, and we are at number 9, so if you're annoyed by that, then you only have one more episode left. Don't worry, it'll be great. So before I hop into episode 9 with McKinzie Deaton, I do just want to do a couple little housekeeping things. The first one being I am recording this on Sunday the 21st, which means that today is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there, and you know what, as well as the single moms, because I was raised by a single mom. She is my mom and my dad, and I love her so much for that. Such a strong, confident woman, so no matter what your parental situation is today, make sure that if you're able to, give your mom and dad a little squeeze, let them know that you love them, and if today might be a little bit harder for you, then just know that you are loved no matter what your parental situation is. And yeah, I love all the moms and dads out there. I'm super thankful to have a really great parental system myself, and I'm thinking of all of you today as you celebrate maybe with your moms and dads, or if you are mourning a loss of a parent at this time as well. I'm here for you, and I love you. Moving on to some other housekeeping, merchandise. Thank you guys so much for buying my merch. I spent a lot of time crying over the just amount of love that I'm getting over the merch, and like people are actually buying it and wearing it out in public, which is making me so happy. Keep doing that. Keep sending me pictures. I want to see it all. It makes me so happy. I seriously have cried a million times over Instagram posts of people wearing my little blueberry t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that. So keep them coming. I love seeing it, and I just love knowing that there are people out there that listen to the podcast and love it and support it. So thank you guys so much for sending me that. Never stop. I don't care if I'm like 65, slide into my DMs with your blueberry t-shirt on, and I will love you forever. So thank you guys so much for that. And the last thing, because I'm just really anxious to get into this interview, is I am on another podcast as well through Public House Media, just like Food for Thought is. It's entitled Catch Up, and it is actually a news production. So it is going to be located anywhere that you guys listen to Food for Thought. So if you're listening to this, just search for the Catch Up podcast in your little search bar, and it'll come up. So it actually releases new episodes Monday through Friday. I am on Monday's episode, so today's episode, the 22nd. And so if you don't get enough of my voice here on Food for Thought, you can hop over to the Catch Up podcast and listen to that as well. I love being able to share news with the world. I'm really passionate about staying up to date on current events, and the Catch Up podcast is different because it ends every single episode with good news, which I love too, because sometimes this world is so dark and sad and scary that I think it's really important to end on a positive note as often as you can, and to focus on the good while acknowledging that there are bad things going out in the world as well. So if you are interested, give that a listen on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, anywhere else you stream your podcast from or listen to music. So make sure to check it out. And if you listen on Apple, leave us a rating and review. All right, you guys. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 9 with McKinzie Deaton. All right. Good morning, everyone. I have with me here today McKinzie Deaton. She was second runner-up to the current Miss Oklahoma 2019, and I am so excited to have her today. She's been my girl crush since I watched Miss Oklahoma last year, and watching you go on and compete and do your own thing, and as an eating disorder advocate, make the top 5 was like a huge deal for me. So I am obsessed with you. You're so cute. You're so fun. And I'm really excited to have you today.
I am so excited to be here. Whenever you reached out to me, I was thrilled. I've actually never done a podcast before, so it's
welcome
new for me, but I'm so excited.
Awesome. And we're so happy to have you. So do you want to just jump right in and tell me a little bit about yourself?
So essentially, I'm 21, about to be 22. I am in my master's program at the University of Oklahoma, pursuing a degree in accounting. So hopefully in the next year or two, I'll pass my CPA and be an official certified public accountant.
Yay.
But other than that, I spend a lot of my time working with the National Eating Disorders Association and volunteering just in my community. It's what I'm passionate about.
Definitely. So what started your passion with working with the National Eating Disorder Association? How did you get into doing all of that?
So whenever I was in high school, I developed an eating disorder that eventually progressed into anorexia nervosa. And so that was about a 2-year process of first developing it and just going through that struggle, and then eventually, with the help of my parents, seeking treatment. And so I saw firsthand what it was like to face those pressures and to live through an eating disorder. And so once I was on what I would consider at least the other side of it, or over the hump of recovery to where I felt like I was in a good position, is when I decided that I wanted to give back to that community, because I don't believe anyone is ever fully recovered. I think we always have those tendencies, or at least those thought processes in our head. But the recovery process teaches you how to cope with it and how to fight off those negative thoughts. And so once I felt really secure in my own recovery is when I wanted to start doing as much as I could to help others see that recovery was possible. My actual fight with an eating disorder was about 5 years total before I really felt like I was in a place where I finally felt like I was recovered. And so in the midst of it, I felt like it was impossible. I never thought that I would get to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And so I'm really hoping that through my advocacy and how I've gotten so involved in Oklahoma and now on a national level, that I can be a spokesperson for recovery to prove that it is possible.
Yeah, definitely. That's so awesome. And I love hearing about other people that overcome that and start advocating for that, because I think it's so important. And eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any other mental illness. And so I think at least what I've experienced is like when you talk about recovering, people almost are surprised that you did, because people associate it with just kind of like forever living in that dark space. And so it's really awesome to see people like you coming out and shining in the light and showing other people that that's possible. How did you come up with your name for your social impact initiative? Because it's Table Talk, correct?
Yes. So I started Table Talk as just a form of communication. I think the most important thing we can do as advocates for eating disorder awareness is starting the hard conversations that other people don't want to. In my own recovery, if someone had been able to talk to me about it, confront me about it earlier on, I think that my recovery would have gone so much smoother and could have started earlier. And so for years, I knew that I was doing something that you would consider wrong. I knew something was up, so to say, but I didn't know what an eating disorder was. I didn't know that I had one. I just thought that I was dieting like anyone else that was in high school at the time. Like it was so popular with young girls to start diets. And so I didn't realize when that turned into such an unhealthy relationship with food and my body. And so I like to go into schools or at LoveWorks Leadership. It's a mentorship program I work at here in Norman. I get to work with middle school girls, and I just try to be an advocate for them. I try to be someone that they can talk to. And that's where Table Talk started, is having those conversations, sitting down. I know I started it with meeting with a couple of girls at Starbucks, getting coffee and just talking to them. And so that's kind of what I've turned it into, is if we can turn mental illness and turn eating disorders into a table topic, is when we're going to start seeing real change.
Definitely. And so you said earlier that you've competed in the Miss and the Teen division of the Miss America organization and that you've held various titles. Did you feel like before you were publicly talking about your eating disorder that it was hard to compete in pageants while dealing with it?
I actually developed my eating disorder my first year in the teen competition, because up until that point, I lived a pretty sheltered life. And then when I started competing in teen, especially in the Miss Oklahoma organization, it is so competitive. And the girls you see there are all at the top of their game. And so starting into teen, I've always been a perfectionist. And so I saw these girls who had been so successful in years prior, who had these chiseled abs and this body that I wanted so badly. And so I met with a trainer for the first time who introduced the ideas of like foods you should limit and what was given to me as a suggestion for a meal plan I made into essentially my Bible. And so if it wasn't on that meal plan I was given, I just wouldn't eat it. And so if it said you can have 4 ounces of protein, that's what I would eat. And so I think it was built as a bare bones type a meal plan to where you were expected to add on to it your own things, and I just didn't. And from there, I started cutting out more and more things because I got addicted to the way my body was changing so rapidly. And so competing in teen, where it developed to eventually seeking recovery my last year in teen, and then starting into the swimsuit competition in Miss, it was really difficult. I was able to make strides in my recovery, but they were very slow steps. And even just in the last year or two, once the swimsuit competition was removed, I saw such a change in myself so quickly. Because up until that point, even my last year in Miss, when there was the swimsuit competition, I felt like I was in a good place. I wasn't restricting. I wasn't engaging in any sort of behaviors, but I still just didn't have a healthy relationship with myself. I had regained a relationship with food, but I still couldn't look in a mirror and be confident in who I saw. And once the Miss America organization took the concept of being judged on your body or your appearance, is when I really was able to fully learn to love McKinzie again. And so that was the biggest transformation, and why I support the 2.0 mindset so much, because for the first time in my life, I didn't have to choose between 2 goals, because for a while it was either choosing full recovery or choosing to be at my best for Miss Oklahoma. And so for the longest time, all I wanted in the world was to be Miss Oklahoma. And so I put my recovery on the back burner, because in order to get my body to the point that I wanted it to look like in a swimsuit, I had to do things to it that weren't helpful to my recovery. And so 2.0 totally changed my mindset and helped me reach full recovery.
Yeah. And that was actually my next question for you, was obviously you'd competed in 1.0 and 2.0. And I think that it's really important to showcase that, like, you felt that way going into Miss America 2.0, and obviously it showed because you competed so well and you placed so well in the organization. And I just think that that is showing, like, that gave me hope sitting in my living room watching it on the live stream. I was like, oh my gosh, this is someone that has dealt with the same things as me, that is now coming into a Miss America 2.0 world, and she's killing it. And I just think that this and women like you are the reason why Miss America 2.0 will continue to evolve and prevail. And I just think that that's just so awesome. I love that.
No, I absolutely attribute my success this last year to being able to put my full focus on bettering myself. Because up until then, it was making sure I spent enough hours in the gym or meal prepping, because especially in the state I was in, pretty much if you aren't a swimsuit winner, you typically weren't in the 5 or weren't up there for the title. And so the years that I prepped so hard for swimsuit, I then wasn't working as hard with my social impact, or at the time it was called a platform, or I wasn't working as hard on interview. But now the last year, so I hadn't made the 10 in my first 3 years. And then last year, when they took away the swimsuit competition and I focused solely on making myself the best version of myself, was when I went from not making the 10 to being second runner-up.
Yeah.
And so that absolutely speaks to the power of what 2.0 has to offer.
And what were some ways that you did work on yourself in preparation for Miss Oklahoma?
Overall, it was just working on speaking skills. When I started in the Miss America organization as a teen, I could not make a coherent sentence. I have always been very introverted, and seeing me on stage, you would never imagine that. I totally gained so many speaking skills through the Miss Oklahoma organization. And last year, I focused on interviewing. And more than anything else, last year was my first year to focus solely on eating disorder awareness and being an advocate for mental health. And so it literally was me sitting down with my parents and talking about the things that are sometimes hard to talk about, just over and over and over, to where I no longer was nervous to tell my story incomplete. I was no longer worried about being judged, because I knew at the end of the day that what I had to say mattered and that it could help someone else. And so it was overcoming those obstacles that I had to work on probably the most. And then just building relationships with other organizations, because that's so important in the new format of Miss America.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned sitting down and talking through things with your parents. So how did they help you in your recovery journey? Were they supportive? Were they taking more of a hands-off approach? Did your family dynamic change at all during your recovery?
They were always very supportive. From the time whenever I started into treatment, I never really wanted to go, and they're kind of who pushed me and made me take those first steps. And then from there on, they were constantly doing all they could to learn about what an eating disorder was, because I think it can be really scary for parents from the outside to see their child dealing with something that they don't understand and they've never experienced, because they just don't know how to help and they don't know what's helpful or harmful. But no, they've been very supportive the entire time. And then especially as I've started into my Table Talk campaign, they have been so helpful. My mom is constantly helping me with all of it. She's been my number one supporter.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. And what do you think, like, I don't know if you have done this or if you're planning on doing it, but if you were to sit down with parents who have children that deal with eating disorders, kind of how would that dialogue, do you think, go with them and dealing with the recovery process?
I've actually had the opportunity to work with a couple of sets of parents. They approached me. I worked with their students and I mentored them. And then they approached me because they knew I had a relationship with them, and they talked to me about their concerns. And so the greatest thing I can offer anyone is to be able to tell them my story and then even connect them with my parents, because it is so isolating for parents in this whole situation. I know we think a lot about the isolation of the individual going through the eating disorder, but being someone who's a loved one and watch someone you love going through it is also very difficult, very isolating. And so giving them hope, giving them helpful steps on how they can help their child, because especially I think in the mental health, like in the mental health world, a lot of those diagnoses, you don't want someone to talk to you about it. You don't want someone to confront you about it. And so just kind of letting those parents know how they can be supporters without always pushing too many boundaries before their child's ready for it.
Definitely. Yeah, that's an aspect that I think a lot of people forget, is that, this is, like any mental illness and eating disorders, is not just affecting the person going through it, it's affecting everyone that they come in contact with in a daily life. And that does include parents. So I think that's really important. So now obviously I do pageants too. So I have to ask, how was competing at Miss Oklahoma this year with Miss America 2.0 outside of swimsuit and outside of all of that?
It was a blast. I swear the whole dynamic of the week of prep, because for Miss Oklahoma, we're there for a full week and we have 3 or 4 days of just rehearsals. And I swear everyone was so much nicer, so much happier, so much friendlier. There weren't as many people focusing so much on when they could get back to their hotel room to do quick workouts.
Yeah.
Or especially we share so many meal times, and it was so encouraging for me as someone who advocates for healthy relationships with food, to see more people choosing the foods they wanted to eat instead of what they felt like they had to. And so that was just a total dynamic change from years prior. And one of the things that I joked about all week was that everyone was so much happier because they weren't hangry. They were just living their best life. If they decided they wanted to eat one of the cookies that were sponsored, they ate one and they weren't about it. But it just totally changed the week, and it was a blast.
Yeah, I was curious about that because that was something, for Miss Wisconsin, we're there for a week too, and this year will be my 4th year competing, and last year, the changes that all happened, and we have a cupcake sponsor. We are based in Oshkosh, Wisconsin for the week, and there's this amazing cupcake place there. Every year they donate cupcakes, and I remember the first year I went in 2016, we got these giant cupcakes day one. And I remember nobody ate them right away. And a cupcake is not good 4 days later. They're gross at that point. But every single girl, myself included, and I kind of did it just because everyone was doing it. And I was 17 at the time. I was like, oh, I got to follow the rules. But everyone saved their cupcake until after swimsuit, and we all ate them together. And that was, at the time, I didn't think of it as like a disordered eating behavior. But then this year in 2019 going, and we got the same cupcakes day one, I think almost everyone ate them like as soon as we got them. And I just kind of took a step back and thought about in the years that I've been competing, how much that changed. And like, I've had roommates, and I'm sure you can speak to this too. Like, I had roommates wake up at like 4:00 in the morning and run the stairs in the hotel and like do all this crazy stuff. And that this year it just all stopped. And I think that it gives women an opportunity to like take the time to focus on their public speaking skills and their interview skills, or rehearse their talent. Like, talent's 50% of your score now. Like, those are the important things, and it's not how you look in a swimsuit or your evening wear. And I think that it's really transitioning well into the Miss America organization.
Oh, absolutely. So we had a venue change for Miss Oklahoma that has just been in place for the past 2 years. But my first 2 years competing, we lived in dorms at Oral Roberts University.
Okay.
And so in the dorms, there was a fitness center. And so girls would take turns going down there and spending so much time trying to get in their cardio, or they had brought all these different weights and things so that they could keep working out all throughout the week, which I'm not sure how it is at Miss Wisconsin, but we do 4 or 5 dance numbers. And so in our rehearsals, we are moving all day long. So by the end of the day, you are exhausted. I can't imagine going from that and then coming back when it's supposed to be your time to relax for the night, and then feeling like you have to go and work out or get to the gym. And so it was so interesting this year to see where no one did that. We spent so much time when we got back to our hotel rooms just like going to each other's rooms and talking and hanging out. Like, I got to know my roommate for the first time in years, because it was just so much more, everyone was so much more relaxed. And I loved it. It made it feel more like a camp or like a sorority house.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, you're supposed to leave your state competition week with all these friends. And I do feel like in years past, people were so stuck in their mental bubble and worried about, people are still worried about placing and how they compete and things like that, as anyone should be that invests any time in it. But like, eliminating the physical aspect really has changed so many dynamics, and that's so important. But side note, I'm so glad we don't have that many dance numbers, because I am like the most uncoordinated human being to ever live.
No, that's me. Literally, so we have a community service award. I apply every year because the interviews are typically during one of the dance numbers that they teach, and then sometimes they don't put those girls into another dance number, and it takes so much stress off of me.
Yes.
I'm the least coordinated person ever. I am a vocalist. I am a classically trained singer. But goodness gracious, you try to get me to dance and it is sad. I'm always on the back row in the corner. If there's like a column or something somewhere, I'm probably behind it so that the rest of the world doesn't have to see my awful dancing.
I am the same way. And this year at state, okay, so I'm shorter. I'm like 5'3". I say 5'3" on a good day. My driver's license says I'm 5'5". That's not true. But I was in the front because I'm shorter for this, I would say it was the first half of the song. And I like being in the back, and you can probably speak to this too, because then I can look at everyone else, and then they should put the dancers in the front, because they're going to remember it. And then all the non-dancers can look at them and still get it right. I think every single night of prelims, it was our opening number dance. So every day for 7 days, we come out and do this dance. I think I finally got it right on crowning night. And it was so there was one part, the end of it was my hands are up in the air. And I just remember being yes, finally. It only took me literally a week. And we got the dance via YouTube. They sent us a link to it probably a month prior to this. And I had been working on it. I was my directors were dancers, and I was teach me how to do this. I just can't. I cannot do it. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, I got in a tangent there. But I can't imagine dancing for that many hours every day and then going and doing a workout. that sounds disgusting. That's not.
Exactly. My number one mantra is saying that recovery is possible. I have not only gone through recovery myself and seen what that path looks like, but I've also been fortunate enough to help a couple of students of mine go through recovery and take those first steps. And my biggest encouragement and my biggest thing that I like to advocate for is being willing to start conversations that are difficult, whether it is with a loved one who you think might be struggling, or if it's about your own journey. If you're ready to take the next step in your recovery, don't be afraid to ask for help. I tell my students every day that they are their own biggest advocate, that they have to be the ones to take that first step because they're in charge of their own life. And so that's what I would like to encourage anyone listening to this today, is that to advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for what you deserve.
All right, everyone, that is this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Make sure if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends, post it somewhere. I love seeing that stuff. Tag me in all of your stuff, guys. Like, please annoy the heck out of me with how much you post about me. I'm here for it. So also, if you want to leave a rating, review, comment, anything like that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do so. I love reading them as well. And thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you for episode number 10 next week.